As the weather gets warm, there's nothing more enjoyable and refreshing than a dip in a cool body of water. And what's more romantic than that dip taking place at night? But at Richardson's Lake, they demand you don't swim at night. And now, we're about to find out exactly why.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and tonight's story is for those of you experiencing a little bit of a heat wave. We're having one over here in Ohio right now. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not in the 90s or anything, but we went straight from having 45-degree days to 85-degree days. And that's making me think all about summertime. And thanks to author Charles Campbell, we're going to head to summer in just a moment with the story. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you so much for listening. You really do help keep the show going and going. For over 4 years now, we've brought you something spooky at least once a week. And we have no intention of stopping. So if you love what we're doing and you want to show us some support, head to weeklyspooky.com, check out our store, check out a t-shirt, a hooded sweatshirt, a coffee mug, or you can click on Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes every single month. And right now, it's a series that takes place in the Strickfield universe called The Weekend. And this very month, May, the final episode of that series will be dropping. So now is the best time to sign up for Weekly Spooky's Patreon for as little as $1 to help us bring the spooky for another 4 years and beyond. And if you want to support us and help make a difference in a way that doesn't cost anything, we appreciate that too very, very much. You can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating. It does make a difference, and it helps us find even more spookies. And if you want to hang out with us spookies, just go to Facebook, type in Weekly Spookies Tomb of Terror. Hang out with me, the authors, and many other fans just like yourself as we share the dark and strange and funny side of life. But now, my dear listener, it's about time to get to the story after these quick words. The Creature from Richardson Lake by Charles Campbell. It was July in the valley, and it was one of the hottest summers on record, with daily temperatures averaging over 95 degrees. Much hotter if you include the heat index. Sally Richardson was on register duty, taking money from the flock of patrons coming in to take a swim or sunbathe on the imported beach sand. Richardson's Lake had been open for business since the 1950s, and it was still as popular as it ever was. Sally was the great-granddaughter of Milo Richardson, the original owner of this redneck Riviera. Sally had a couple of cousins helping her run the place, along with a few Valley teenagers from Midland Valley High School's swim team. The days were mostly drama-free. The biggest issues they had, outside of bad weather here and there, were Valley kids trying to pass off the stamp on their hands from the day before as paid admission for that day. Sally had a system when stamping hands that involved many changing symbols and colors at the start of each swim day. Summer passes were also available, which some folks took advantage of, but most of them paid as they entered. Richardson's Lake was also a cash-only establishment, so they could be a little fudgy when it came to tax time. There was a hard and fast rule that everyone knew and no one broke until someone did. No swimming after sundown. Well, that should give you a hint of where we're going with this story. Some dumbass valley kids ignored the rule one night, and this is what happened. Cecil Dalton had a cooler full of beer and a big pinch of Skoal in his gums. He was sitting on the front stoop of his mama's double-wide trailer, spitting tobacco juice as he waited. Then he saw Billy Frost's Jeep turn down Oak Street. Cecil leapt from the stoop and grabbed the cooler. Billy dimmed the Jeep lights when he approached. He wasn't sure if Cecil's mama cared if he went out this late or not. "Your mama home?" Billy asked. "Yeah, she's asleep. She don't give a shit where I go, so you're good," Cecil said with a grin. "Hey, Cece," Angie Renew shouted from the passenger seat. She was a hyper little thing, skinny as a string bean, and Billy was smitten with her. "Hey, little girl, guess you got shotgun," Cecil said. He smiled when he saw who was in the back seat. "Now, that ain't who I think it is it? Get on back here, Cece, and give me some sugar," hollered Mandy Hudson. Mandy was not skinny as a string bean. She was completely filled out in all the right ways. She had known Cecil since grammar school, and Mandy always loved flirting with her big teddy bear. Oh yeah, Cecil was an offensive lineman for the varsity football team at Midland Valley High. He climbed into the back of the Jeep, and she planted a big wet one right on his lips. "Ew, he's got a mouthful of that Skoal shit," Angie screamed when she heard the smooch. "I don't care. More flavor," Mandy replied. Angie glanced at her man and said, "Let's skedaddle." Billy obeyed, and the quartet headed to Warrensville, South Carolina, home of the valley famous Richardson's Lake. Billy cut the lights when he approached the driveway to Richardson's Lake. They needed to be as quiet as they could because Sally's house was at the top of the hill, less than a quarter-mile away from the swimming hole. Billy stopped short of the driveway and pulled the Jeep into a cutaway that was somewhat secluded, especially at night. It was a full moon, so they had that working for them. There were no lights on inside the confines of Richardson Lake. Cecil smiled when he noticed the moon's reflection in the still water. He wished he'd brought his fishing gear, but if the bass popped like he thought they would on a night like this, it wouldn't be long before the Warrenville PD were called to deal with late-night trespassers. "You bring the floats?" Billy asked Angie. "Yeah, you saw me put them in the Jeep." "You bring the air pump? Because I ain't about to be blowing on floats for an hour," Angie shot back. "Well, floats ain't what I got in mind for you to blow. Billy, you better stop that sentence or it definitely won't happen." Angie cut him off as she winked at Mandy. Mandy was latched onto Cecil's arm. "Yeah, I got the air pump. Put some fresh batteries in it, too," Billy said. "Well, I got the most important thing here," Cecil said as he lifted the cooler full of beer. "I reckon everybody likes PBR. If you don't, you're SOL. "Good deal. Now, we can't be hooping and hollering when we get to the water. Sally does have a shotgun, and I know she ain't scared to use it. I'm sure it's just rock salt, but I have personally been hit with rock salt, and I think Cecil has too, if I remember right." Cecil shook his head in the affirmative. "And that shit hurts. She might pepper us with it before she calls the law, so we can swim, we can have some fun." He smiled at Angie. "But we need to keep it down. So no, we won't be playing chicken." "Got it," Mandy said. She dragged Cecil by the arm through the path. Richardson's Lake was mostly fenced in with the exception of a small break where a deer plowed through the wood the summer before. Sally hadn't gotten around to fixing it, and Billy noticed it a few Saturdays back when he and Angie swam beyond the yellow ropes, which got whistles galore from the Midland Valley High staffers. Angie had a beach bag full of towels and a couple of flattened floats. Billy grabbed the air pump and they followed Cecil and Mandy down the path. In the dark corner of Richardson's Lake, well beyond the yellow ropes that segregated the swimming hole, the creature raised its head from its meal. It stopped chewing on the very dead body of a fat copperhead to listen. The gills on the side of its neck flexed open before closing. The creature took in a deep breath of night air through the 2 slits it had for a nose. The scent made it drop what was left of the snake. Something tastier was just added to the menu. The creature slinked into the dark water and swam slowly toward the swimming hole. Cecil was sitting on a towel, chugging down his second PBR. Mandy was stuck to his side, drinking one of her own. Billy and Angie were quietly swimming. "I don't know why they don't open this place at night," Mandy said. "Yeah, it's pretty nice out here with the moon and all," Cecil replied. They heard Angie splash Billy, followed by a shh from Billy. "We're going to get hit with some rock salt, aren't we?" Mandy asked, as she placed her head on Cecil's large shoulder. "Probably," Cecil answered, and finished off his beer before putting his arm around Mandy for a good squeeze. He loved the feel of her next to him. He couldn't imagine squeezing Angie like this. He figured she'd snap like a twig. "I want to jump off the diving board," Angie whined. "Absolutely not. You want to go to jail tonight?" Billy said. "No. Can we at least swim out to the big platform?" Angie asked, puffing out her lips. "Yeah, that we can do. We can even race if you want, but no shouting. I'll even give you a 30-second head start to make it fair," Billy finished. "Deal. So what do I get if I win?" Angie asked. "Well, I'll take you to that movie you've been begging me to see. That chick flick, The Wedding, or something or whatever." "It's called The Nuptials of Rosie and Blake," Angie corrected. When he heard that vomit-inducing title, Billy knew he had no choice but to win. "And if I win, we can revisit that blowing thing we were discussing earlier," Billy said. Angie rolled her eyes and counted down from 5 before she started furiously swimming for the platform. Billy stayed in place and began counting. He didn't realize how long 30 seconds could be, especially when it meant the possibility of a shitty chick flick in his immediate future. The creature stealthily approached the swimming hole. It was just beyond the yellow ropes, and it could see 2 of them in the water and 2 on the shore. It focused on the 2 in the water. The smaller one started swimming in the creature's direction. The creature dropped its head below the surface and tracked Angie's movement. She was coming toward it, and the creature began an intercept course. It could have moved swiftly and pulled her to the deep within seconds, but this creature was like a cat in one regard. It liked to play with its food. Billy was almost to 30, and although it wasn't super loud, he could hear the steady rhythm of Angie moving her arms and legs. She had quite the lead with the 30-second head start, and Billy seriously doubted he could make up the time. He was just about resigned to defeat. Then the count was at 30, and Billy took off like a speedboat. Angie could see the platform just ahead, and she could hear Billy slicing through the water some distance behind her. He sounded fast, no doubt spurred on by the reward she didn't exactly promise him, but would give him anyway. But she really wanted to see this movie, so Angie kicked it into another gear. She was only about 20 feet away from the platform when she felt something graze her right leg. She didn't stop to figure out what it could be. Angie swam faster. Then something grazed her left leg. 10 feet away from the platform now, she would be on the ladder in just a few seconds. Angie wanted to scream, but she knew that it would bring all kinds of unwanted attention and, for what, a couple of curious fish bumping into her. She smiled as she was within a couple of feet of the ladder. Angie could almost taste the popcorn. And Riverwatch Cinema popcorn was the best popcorn on the planet as far as Angie was concerned. Angie reached up, grabbed a ladder rung, and in a blink of an eye, she was pulled under. A few moments before, the creature was directly underneath Angie. She was swimming with a purpose, The creature extended a scaly arm and gently swiped at her leg with its webbed hand. Angie kept swimming. The creature swiped her other leg. She kept swimming. The creature was aware of the platform. Even if Angie reached it and pulled herself up, she would be no match for the creature. The creature darted ahead and positioned itself just under the ladder and waited a few seconds until Angie grabbed the rung. The creature grabbed Angie by both feet and yanked her under the water. She was so light and the creature moved her with no effort. Angie was literally screaming underwater. Her eyes were open, but she couldn't see a thing. She felt a sharp pain in the side of her neck, followed by the sensation of being wrapped in something slimy. The creature had enveloped her, and it was ripping at her neck and throat with razor-sharp teeth. Angie was dead. The creature pulled her along quickly to its nest on the other side of the shore. There she would keep while it went out to get more groceries. Billy reached the platform. He didn't see Angie. "Stop messing around," Billy said, trying not to be too loud. He pulled himself up onto the platform and walked around trying to see if she were hanging on any of the sides, waiting to jump up and scare him. All Billy saw was dark water, and his heart started to race. Should he scream out loud and wake up Sally and her rock salt, with Angie surely revealing her location before the shit show started, or would he just swim back to shore and wait out her shenanigans? He would go with the second option and hoped he knew his girlfriend like he thought he did. Billy dove into the water and began swimming. "They sure got quiet on us," Mandy said. Cecil smiled because that was okay with him. Mandy was laying in his arms, in her bathing suit no less, and they were stargazing together. "You think there's something out there somewhere?" Cecil asked. "In the stars?" "Yeah, I'm sure there is. Too many possibilities for there not to be," Mandy said. She burrowed into the pit of his arm like a needy pup. "I wonder what they look like. You think they have big brains like in that movie where they zapped everybody?" Cecil pondered. "Maybe," Mandy replied. She sat up when she heard someone swimming back to shore. They could tell by the force that it had to be Billy. "Where's Angie?" Mandy asked as Billy sloshed his way back to shore. "I was hoping she was up here with you. I think she's messing with me. We raced to the platform and she beat me. But now I think she's trying to rub it in a little. But seeing as she ain't up here with you two, it might be time for me to worry," Billy said as he turned back toward the dark water. "Come on, Cece, let's help him look. She's probably still near the platform trying to get us to crack and wake up Sally," Mandy said. "But why would she do that?" Cecil asked. "To make a memory and be able to talk about that time we almost got tattered up with rock salt by Sally," Mandy replied as she followed Billy into the water. "That's pretty fucking dumb," Cecil replied. "I didn't say it was smart. Come on now, Cece," Mandy said, and waited until Cecil was beside her. They followed Billy back toward the platform. The creature had a membrane, much like an alligator that slid over its eyes when submerged. It slid open when its face broke the surface. It watched the trio enter the water. The creature submerged and watched them from below. It wasn't going to have to hunt for a while after tonight. The three of them climbed on the platform, one at a time. Mandy searched the edges like Billy had done not long before. "Angie!" Mandy hollered, holding back as much as she dared. "This isn't funny! Get your bony ass up here, right now!" Cecil and Billy listened for movement after Mandy's command. Cecil glanced in the direction of Sally's house to see if any lights came on. It was still dark. "Damn it," Mandy said. All phones were on the beach because none of them were waterproof and they didn't think they would be in a predicament where they would need them. They honestly believed that Angie would emerge from wherever she was hiding and say the joke was all on them. Now, the realization of that not happening was setting in. Billy was walking around the platform. Mandy approached Cecil to say something when the creature burst up from the ladder and onto the platform. "Fuck!" Mandy screamed. The creature was tall, over 7 feet, slender, and a very dark shade of green. The gill flaps on the sides of its neck were pulsating. Its body was covered in scales and its hands and feet were webbed with claws as sharp as its teeth. And the fucker was fast. Before Billy could react, the creature grabbed him by the back of his long hair and slammed him to the platform before pouncing on top of him and ripping his throat out. It had even more groceries to collect. Mandy and Cecil didn't waste any time. They were in the water and swimming for all they were worth. Mandy was screaming as loud as her body would allow with every free breath. Cecil was ahead of Mandy. He heard the splash of the creature diving into the water. Cecil slowed so Mandy could get in front of him. Chivalry was not dead. Mandy glanced back. She saw light. The lights came on at Sally's house. "Sally! Sally! Shotgun!" Mandy hollered as much as she could while still swimming for her life. The feeling in Cecil's gut was one of hopelessness. He couldn't hear the creature, but he knew it was gaining on them, all the same. And it was so sudden. Cecil watched in terror as Mandy was pulled under in front of his very eyes. She was there screaming and swimming. And then she was gone. "Sally! Sally!" Cecil was now hollering. He heard a car moving quickly down the driveway out of Richardson's lake. He heard the screech of tires. Sally had heard them. Cecil hoped like hell she brought the shotgun. Cecil was now in waist-deep water. He was fighting for all he was worth to get to shore. Cecil could see the towel he and Mandy were laying on not half an hour ago. "Oh, no, 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 no!" Sally screamed as she ran by the Jeep, shotgun in hand. Cecil was now crawling on the shore, almost completely out of breath. "Monster! Monster!" he said, pointing to the water behind him. Sally nodded at Cecil as if to say everything was going to be okay when she raised the shotgun. Cecil turned back toward the water to see where she was aiming. Was the creature behind him? Sally racked the shell and pulled the trigger. Cecil's head exploded like a watermelon with a lit cherry bomb inside. There was no rock salt in this shotgun. Sally took a seat in the dirt. She'd wait until the family secret came and gathered the last of his groceries. The law would find an abandoned Jeep, some empty beer cans. Sally would be sure to empty them all. And no kids. They'd half-ass drag the lake, ask her a question or two of which she would be clueless. You see, Sally was asleep inside the whole time. Oh, and Sally would be sure to point out the biggest rule of Richardson's lake. No swimming after sundown. And that reminded her to fix the fence. All right, my spookies. Well, we learned a valuable lesson here today about why you don't go swimming in Richardson's lake after dark. And a big thank you again to Charles Campbell. If you love his work on the show as much as I do, make sure to check out his podcast, Horror 421. He interviews all kinds of people from horror media and music. I've appeared on there a few times myself, so make sure to check out Horror 421 for a great interview podcast all about the scarier side of life. And speaking of the scarier side of life, as I mentioned last week, I am in the midst of directing a brand new horror film. It's called Babysitter Massacre 2, and yes, it is related to the books we've released right here on Weekly Spooky. And yes, I will be letting you know when it's available for you to watch. I'm really excited about it. Something else I'm extremely excited about is the fact that we're about to wrap up The Weekend, the exclusive Strickfield series on Patreon. It's a 12-episode one, and honestly, it keeps you guessing. Well, when this one ends, we begin a brand new one, which I'll be unveiling very soon, but this one is a 24-parter. And I know you'll enjoy it, so if you want to get involved, head to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and sign up. And speaking of Patreon, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters. These are folks who pay a bit more to hear their names on the show, and they are Johnny Nix, John Callan, Bobbletopia.com, Jenny Green, Brent McCullough, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. And if you want to have your name on the show every single week, go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and select a tier at $15 a month or higher. But remember, for as little as $1, you can get 2 bonus episodes every single month. But now it's time for me to get back to work. There is so much to do, so for myself, for my composer Ray Mattis, my executive producers Rob Fields and Mark Shields, and my producer Dan Wilder, I will talk at you next time. Stay spooky.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.